Kenya has today held its first National Tree Planting Day in a project that the government targets to grow and nurture 15 billion trees by 2032 in order to restore and conserve 10.6 million hectares of degraded landscapes and ecosystems. Climate change ranks among the most important dynamics shaping livelihoods of young people and now in the future. The reason why tonight on the Dialogue KE, I'll be joined in studio by Abigail Kima, a climate justice advocate, and Waweru Avram, the global head of communications at the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network, as we discuss on the role of the youth in climate action. A very good evening to you and welcome to Hope TV Newswatch on this 13th day of November 2023. My name is Kennedy Kimani and my co-presenter on the sign language interpretation is Boniface Moridi. President William Ruto has called for concerted efforts in environmental protection so as to mitigate the effects of climate change. Speaking today when he launched the National Tree Growing Day at Key Wetland in Makindu, Makueni County, the head of state appealed to Kenyans to support the government's tree planting exercise so as to increase the country's tree cover. During the event, 150,000 seedlings were planted as part of a nationwide campaign aimed at utilizing the short rains to grow 100 million seedlings across the country. Our very own Faith Kaulu begins our bulletin with the following report.
President William Ruto led the country today in planting trees in the first ever National Tree Planting Day as a patriotic contribution to the national efforts to save the country from the devastating effects of climate change. Speaking today at Key Wetland in Makindu, Makueni County, where 150,000 seedlings were planted, the president appealed to Kenyans to support the government's tree planting exercise so as to increase the country's tree cover.
This assignment of planting trees across Kenya is not about age, it's not about religion, it's not about party, it's not about the area you come from. It is about us as a nation and our future and the future of our environment and the future of our food security as a country. And all of us must work together in concert so that we protect our environment by doing the necessary, planting trees, preserving our wetlands, making sure that all water towers are protected, are fenced off, so that we can have assurance of better climatic conditions.
The president, who was accompanied by the First Lady Rachel Ruto, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Second Lady Pastor Dorcas, Environment CES Soipantuya, among other leaders, urged Kenyans to cease encroachment on the country's wetlands and forests, emphasizing the importance of safeguarding water catchment areas. In this regard, the head of state said that the government will step up efforts geared towards protecting and rehabilitating over 10,000 wetlands in the country.
Kwa hivyo kama kuna mpango itakayochangia katika kuhakikisha kwamba tuko na chakula ya kutosha, katika mambo ya cost of living, ni kuhakikisha kwamba tunalinda mazingira yetu, maji ipatikane, mvua ipatikane, tuzalishe chakula ili tuondoe njaa katika taifa letu la Kenya.
Kuna mtu mmoja alisema kwamba panda mti ambao kivuli chake haitakufaidi wewe. Kusema kwamba tupande miti ili tuweze kusaidia vizazi ambavyo vinakuja katika siku za usoni.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said the government is keen on addressing water challenges in Ukambani area and other parts of the country, with the Environment's Cabinet Secretary Soipantuya emphasizing on the importance of environmental conservation, which will restore economic activities in agricultural regions that have been affected by climate change.
Mwaka 2007 mkapanda maharagwe haikumea. 2013 mkapanda maharagwe haikumea. 2017 mkapanda haikumea. 2022 mkarudia hiyo maharagwe. Sasa hii maharagwe mtaendelea kupanda? Mtaendelea kupanda? Nyinyi mnasema mambo yenu ni ngapi? Water, maji na kewo.
We had more than 2 million new trees registered under the Jazamiti application, planted across the country. I'm sure today the numbers will be looking good. We don't have the figures because of the network here, but I'm sure the figures are good. Your Excellency, you have seen the Q wetland here speaks for the sorry state of all our wetlands in this country. Your Excellency, the people of Makindu here have said mambo yao ni matatu. Wamesema ni maji, KO, and water.
Now, according to a 2021 report by the National Forest Resources Assessment, Kenya's tree cover stands at 12.13%, while forest cover is at 8.83%, up from 5.9% as of 2018. The National Tree Planting Exercise forms part of the country's landscape and ecosystem restoration program, which aims to grow and nurture 15 billion trees by 2032 to restore and conserve 10.6 million hectares of degraded landscape and ecosystems. Faith Kaulu for Hope TV Newswatch.
Thank you so much, Faith, for that report. More than 300,000 tree seedlings were planted today in the counties of Garissa, Mandera and Wajir in an effort to restore the northern Kenya drylands. Speaking today when he launched the national tree growing exercise in Garissa County, Interior CS Kithure Kindiki said that tree planting and growing will be a national culture so as to save Kenya from the ravages of climate change, including droughts and floods. The CS said that the government has considered and defined climate change as one of the 5 major security threats facing Kenya today. At the same time, saying that every Kenyan has a patriotic duty to conserve the environment and reverse the situation by planting and growing trees.
Likizo na sio likizo ya kuvinjari, sio likizo ya kufurahia, ni likizo ya wananchi wote wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kujihusisha katika upanzi na utunzaji wa miti ili tuokoe nchi yetu isikuwe jangwa na nchi yetu isiwe inapata ukame ama mafuriko mara kwa mara. Kwa hivyo hii siku ya leo katika kaunti zote 47 kuna sherehe kama hii. Kwa hivyo tumesema ya kwamba machifu wote na manaibu wao katika Jamhuri ya Kenya wataendelea kuhusika na kuhamasisha wananchi katika kupanda miti katika kata zao na kata ndogo zao. This is going to be a culture in our country, and we want to say as Ministry of Interior, we have directed our chiefs and our assistant chiefs under the supervision of their superiors to make sure that they inculcate the culture of tree planting, tree growing, so that we can save our country from the ravages of climate change, including drought and floods.
Still at Tharaka, the Governor Muthomi Njuki has issued fresh orders aimed at curbing the careless cutting down of trees for charcoal, asking traders to seek county permits before cutting any tree in addition to the chief's permit. Speaking at the Kadwana Stadium at an event to kickstart the National Tree Planting Day, Governor Njuki said there arose a problem of charcoal traders invading forest and homesteads, offering little money for trees for charcoal business, yet they were making a killing out of it. The governor has said that the executive will formulate a bill for onward transmission to the assembly, seeking to protect hills in the county and the possibility of completely banning charcoal burning in efforts to conserve forests. The governor has also banned beekeeping in forest as well as selling firewood to tea factories.
After 10 years, hiyo miti nusu yake ni makaa. Na hiyo makaa imeenda kupika Nairobi, ingine imeenda kupika Meru, ingine imeenda kupika utalii na nyuki. Tutakuwa tumefanya kazi ya aina gani? Kuna kazi tumefanya hapo? I have told my Department of Energy na Environment, we must encourage our people to have alternative source of energy, sio makaa. Na wakati tuliingia kwa serikali, tulisukuma na tukaambia watu wenu enforcement, hatutaki kuona magari kitoka Tharaka Nithi kama inaenda Nairobi kama imebeba makaa. Nikakubali hiyo wakati kwamba tumekubali wewe kubeba gunia moja ya makaa kwenda kutumia nyumbani. Malori siku hizi hakuna. Lakini even that one sack I'm considering, if we shall not have display, hiyo moja itarudi tufika pale tuseme usionekane ukikata makaa, ukisoma makaa. Si mimi sisui ukiwa na makaa nyumbani kwako. Lakini pale utatoa hiyo si shida yetu. Tafuta makaa, lakini tutaki kuona kufanya nini? ukichoma. Hiyo inakuwa kama illicit brew. Hiyo ni kumaanisha kwamba chief and assistant chief mbele ya county commissioner, you must regulate katika kijiji yenu ile miti inakatwa kutengeneza makaa ni gani. Mtu akuja kuambia hii mti hii unaona ilikatika ikaanguka, hii inafaa kuwa anapatiwa nafasi nikata makaa, nichome makaa, ama hii imeangukia nyumba, lakini huwezi kubali. The biggest mugumo tree, the biggest acacia tree in the village, mtu unaamuka siku moja aseme hii ni nyanya yangu alipanda, ni babu yangu, hata wewe umehamia hapa juzi sio ukoo yangu, huwezi zuia nikate mti. Weka hii pingu, peleka pale kwa police station, nitakuonyesha ile sheria tutatumia kufunga yeye.
Moving on, and the UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala led other government officials and members of the public in a national tree planting exercise at Aramaget ECDE Center in West Pokot County. The early morning exercise attracted a number of people who turned up to participate in the tree planting exercise. Malala said the exercise will help children in future and is the responsibility of leaders to conserve the environment.
Kwa nini this time round hata chama ina participate kwa executive functions? Hii ni kwa sababu wakati tulikuwa tunakuja hapa wakati wa campaign, rais wetu ambaye yeye ndio party leader wa UDA alitembea na manifesto yake akisema kwamba ni lazima akichaguliwa atatimiza hiyo manifesto. Na baadhi ya vitu ambazo zilikuwa kwa hiyo manifesto ilikuwa kwamba atapanda miti bilioni 15 kwa miaka 10. Na ni muhimu sisi kama chama tuweze fuatilia zile promises ambazo rais alikuwa amesema during campaign.
Sababu when we think about climate change, watu wengi wanafikiria ni mvua ama miti. In fact, we don't understand, we don't distinguish. Lakini climate change, we are talking about a longer term shift in temperatures and weather. Kama ni jua inakuwa longer than we expect, kama ni mvua iko longer than we expect. And climate change, it can be caused by many things. Inaweza ikaletwa na activities zenye tunafanya kwa mashamba yetu. Inaweza ikaletwa na natural calamities. And I always say, anything yenye iko natural, hatuwezi tukapinga. Lakini kwa sababu tulikuwa karibu na mlima, nikiangalia kule juu, I could see people burning charcoal. I could see people wakilima huko, ng'ombe zimepelekwa mpaka kwa mlima juu. Where do you think the water will come from?
Sisi kama kaunti tumeweka watu tahadhari kwamba msiturudishe nyuma. Wakati sisi tunapanda miti hapa, rais anaweka target ya miaka 10. Tupande miti bilioni hizo amesema. Tusiwe sasa sisi watu ya kuharibu. Sisi tunapanda, mnapunguza. Kwa hivyo mimi kama gavana na county government ya West Pokot nimesema tutashirikiana na serikali kuu na zile idara zote, KFS na kadhalika, tutawachukulia hatua. Wale wote, na mimi nimesema kama gavana si mara ya kwanza, kwa wale watu wanaishi wameingia kwa forest kinyume, waanze kutoka, kwa sababu hii leo ni mwamko mpya.
President William Ruto has urged countries across the world to explore alternatives to use of plastic bags as part of efforts to tackle pollution. Speaking today at the United Nations office in Gigiri, Nairobi, during the opening of the third session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Ending Plastic Pollution, the head of state asked producers and innovators to rethink plastic products and packaging to reflect the principles of reuse, refill, and repair.
Speaking today during the opening of the third session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Ending Plastic Pollution at the UN offices in Gigiri, Nairobi, President William Ruto urged the world to follow Kenya's example by banning plastic paper bags in order to tackle pollution, challenging producers and innovators to rethink plastic products and packaging to reflect the principles of reuse, refill, and repair.
I would like to affirm Kenya's commitment to ending plastic pollution. We demonstrated this commitment with a ban on the manufacture and use of polythene bags in 2017, followed closely in 2020 with a ban on single-use plastics in protected areas such as national parks, forests, and beaches. Further, in July 2022, Kenya enacted the Sustainable Waste Management Act, which made our country the first in the world to subject all products, including plastics, to extended producer responsibility. We know this is not enough, and we are ready to play our part in the elimination of plastic pollution.
President Ruto argued that there is need to explore alternative options such as non-plastic substitutes, alternative plastics and plastic products that do not have negative environmental, health and social impacts, at the same time challenging African plastic alternative industries to become market leaders and drive economic growth and transformation on the continent.
It is now time for investors, multinational corporations and technology companies to shift strategic investment to reduce their plastic waste footprint. We call upon producers and innovators to rethink plastic products and packaging to reflect the principles of reuse, refill, repair, and repurpose for exploring alternative options such as non-plastic substitutes, alternative plastics, and plastic products that do not have negative environmental, health, and social impacts.
The head of state also expressed concern that every year, more than 400 million tons of plastic waste are produced globally, emphasizing that such kind of pollution on the environment is unacceptable.
23 million tons find their way into rivers, lakes, and oceans, and less than 10% is recycled. Across the world, 46% of plastic waste is landfilled, 22% is mismanaged and becomes litter, while 17% is incinerated. If we hold our laurels and do nothing, we will produce more than 1 billion tons of plastic by 2060. This kind of polluting our environment is unacceptable and is essentially an existential threat to life, to humanity, and to everything in between.
At the same time, UNEP Executive Director Inga Anderson has said that there is need for a comprehensive approach in tackling the problem of plastic use from its product to packaging.
And Africa is a continent of natural resources that can be used for planet-friendly alternatives and substitutes to plastic. Friends, the coming days will be crucial, and it's in your hands.
The threat of plastics to our planet, our health, and our future is of such magnitude that it requires all of us, and I mean all of us, the Global South and the Global North, to develop and execute a global instrument that will help us to neutralize the threat of plastic pollution in our world.
46 people have died as a result of the floods caused by the ongoing El Nino rains. This is according to Interior CS Kithure Kindiki, who has called on Kenyans to adhere to directives issued by security officers on areas prone to flooding and landslides to avert accidents during this El Nino period. Speaking when he launched the national tree growing exercise in Garissa County, the CS at the same time assured Kenyans that the government has collaborated with various key stakeholders to ensure that no Kenyan will lose their life because of displacement and floods.
Hii mvua ambayo inatusaidia tupande na tukuze miti, vilevile imekuja na mambo ya IDPs. Na mimi nataka niseme ya kwamba serikali inatambua kuna wananchi ambao wametolewa makwao kwa sababu ya mafuriko. Tumeshirikiana na washikadau wakiwemo wenzetu kutoka shirika la Msalaba Mwekundu kuhakikisha kwamba chakula ya kutosha imekuja hapa, na mimi naunga mkono mambo ambayo gavana wetu Excellency Nadhif Jama amesema. Serikali kuu itaunga mkono serikali ya county, ile chakula ambayo iko hapa ndio ifikie wananchi mahali wapo. I want to assure you, no Kenyan will die because of displacement, because of floods, and we, in partnership with county government and the Red Cross and other organizations will make sure that food reaches our people wherever they are. Tunaendelea kuonya watu wetu wasiingiliane sana na maji. Maji ni hatari. Ukiona mvua, ukiona msongamano wa maji, kaa mahali huko mpaka upate msaada. Usijiingize kwa mto ama mafuriko ya maji, kwa sababu hata inchi moja ya maji ambayo inatembea iko na nguvu kiasi na inaweza kusababisha maafa. Na niseme katika taifa letu la Kenya tayari tumepoteza watu 46 kwa sababu ya mafuriko katika sehemu nyingi, sehemu mbalimbali katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. We have lost 46 people because of drowning, because of floods, and we don't want any single Kenyan to lose their life.
Away from that, and the Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakumicha has distributed more than 2,400 smartphones to community health promoters for effective service delivery within West Pokot County. CS Nakumicha has said the community health promoters have already been trained and were given keys to start delivering door-to-door health services to locals so as to ensure health services are available, accessible and affordable to every Kenyan.
Tuko na 100,000 community health promoters. Hapa West Pokot County tuko na 2,423 community health promoters. Tulishawafanyia training, tumewapatia kits. Sasa leo nimekuja kuhandover smartphones. Sababu tumesema kazi yao sasa ikuwe rahisi, ikuwe digitized. Wakiingia kwa homestead wanachukua details za hiyo homestead kupitia kwa hizi digital phones ambazo tumewapatia leo, na tumeleta the total amount of 2,423 to ensure kila community health promoter ako na hiyo smartphone ili akaweze kufanya kazi yake kwa urahisi.
Sisi serikali ya county naunga zile zote policies ambayo national government natupa, kwa sababu inaenda ku enhance mambo ya afya katika kaunti yetu. Tukijua kaunti ya West Pokot kwa muda mrefu imekuwa kaunti ambayo imebaki nyuma.
The leadership of the UDA party has continued to mobilize the members of the party in Bungoma County before the grassroots election, which is scheduled to take place in December this year. The party officials have assured the members that the party elections will be held in a transparent manner, at the same time asking them to vie for various leadership positions from the grassroots to the county level.
Na leo tuko hii Bungoma kwa minajili ya ensure that tumefanya sensitization into the grassroots election yenye itakuja December tarehe 9. Na basically leo tumekuja hapa kufanya sensitization kwa wale ambao walikuwa wameonyesha interest na wale ambao wamejisajili. Nadhani nyinyi wote mlikuwa kwa hall, mmeweza kuona the number of people wenye wamekuja hapa, na wote hao ambao wamekuwa hapa ni wale ambao wamejisajili kuwa viongozi wa chama cha UDA.
Kitu ya maana kabisa ni internal democracy. Na tukianzia kwa polling center kupata viongozi, tuende kwa ward, tuende mpaka kwa county level. Tutakuwa tumeweka structures za ku-ensure kuwa kuna internal democracy. Atuangalie hata kwamba ni lazima wale grassroots leaders, kwa sababu wengine wao wanaweza kuwa hawaombi viti. But kutakuwa na internal democracy yenye ni wazi. Hakuna mambo ya kusema ati mtu anatembea na certificate ameweka kwa mfuko. Kwa sababu kujulikana kwako kutatokana na kwa polling center. Tutarudi kwa polling center tuulize kama unataka ubunge kwa ward ya hiyo ward umetoka, hiyo constituency umetoka, watu wako. Na si watu ambao ni vigeugeu.
Mtu ana ruhusa ya kutoka chama kingine kwenda chama kingine pasi na kushurutishwa na mtu yeyote. Kwa hivyo nauliza kwamba kama umechaguliwa kama kiongozi, heshimu jinsi katiba ya nchi ya Kenya inavyosema. Na wewe kama kiongozi, unganisha watu katika jimbo la Bungoma.
And to some sporting action now, Cole Palmer came back to haunt his former club as he scored a 95th minute penalty for Chelsea in a 4-4 draw against Manchester City in the English Premier League. Palmer, who swapped his boyhood club for Chelsea in the summer, held his nerve to beat Ederson as Mauricio Pochettino's side came from behind for that time in a breathless game. The draw means City move a single point clear of Arsenal and Liverpool at the top of the table, while Chelsea, only 5 days on from playing out another classic against Tottenham, moved to the 10th position in the table. Well, with that, we come to the end of the first part of this broadcast, but after the break, we go straight to the dialogue. KE, stick around.
My best part about being a Hope FM listener was Hope Through the Night. My radio was always on at night, just worshiping and getting the sermons on the top of every hour, and it really made me a stronger worshiper. It made me a stronger worshiper. My best part about being a Hope FM staff has to be treasure hunt with the boys and girls every Saturday morning, being Auntie Rhoda. Oh, I just loved teaching the children. There's a child who wrote in her composition, she was writing about her family, and she wrote one of her aunties is Auntie Rhoda. I was so happy because I'd never met her, but they knew me as their auntie, and just teaching them in the ways of the Lord. So I really thank God for every moment I spent at Hope FM, and even for now, being impacted as a listener.
Je, ushawahi kuweka jambo kwenye mizani? Ushawahi kupata uzito wake? Haya basi, usitapetape zaidi. Naomba unigande, maana mizani ipo hapa kwa ajili yako.
Vyakula na mbegu za kitamaduni,
na kutuliza fikra na kukuwezesha kupima masuala ibuka katika jamii, tena kwa busara. Tukutane mizani kila Ijumaa saa 1 machweo kwenye runinga ya Hope TV.
I've actually been trying to find a balance. It's been really tough and hectic, but everyone says once you get a hang of it, it becomes better, and I don't know, but I'm hoping to find a balance soon because it's really been hectic. But you've been in the job industry for a long time, so I think you would know better. Sindio?
Huh? What time is it? I need to catch up on Leadership Forum. Do they have a radio here? Never mind. I brought my own.
No way. You can't be serious. Wait, why do you have a radio and you can just catch up with the shows on Hope FM podcasts?
Really? Even Meet of the One?
Yeah. I mean, you can find them on whatever platform, name it. AfriPods, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it.
But I'm not subscribed on any of them.
So no worries. You can just check out their latest episodes on hopemediakenya.org.
You can now listen to select Hope FM programs on your favorite podcast streaming platform or directly on our website.
Yesu ndiye njia.
Mtoto gani katika hii ulimwengu ameitwa Mungu mkuu?
Nasema akasema udhu billahi.
Hata leo usisema udhu billahi, tafadhali usikize.
Yesu ndiye njia. Uchambuzi wa masuala tata katika Biblia na vitabu vingine vya kidini.
We don't believe that Christ was crucified. Christ was taken right to heaven by 4 angels, 4 archangels.
Kama Muhammad ndiye alikuwa wa kwanza kuleta dini ya Kiislamu, na alikuja after Jesus, sasa inawezekanaje Ibrahimu awe Muislamu, Musa awe Muislamu?
Yesu ndiye njia. Jadala wa moja kwa moja kati ya walimu wa Kikristo na dini zingine.
Wanasema Mwenyezi Mungu ana mtoto. Jambo hilo wanasema mmeleta jambo ambalo linachukiza.
Siri ya Mungu ambaye Mungu amejidhihirisha katika mili. Hii yote ni ukafiri.
Mmefanya makosa makubwa sana kusema kwamba Isa ibn Maryam ni Mungu wa pili na Allah ambaye ameumba mbingu na ardhi mkasema ni Mungu wa tatu.
Yesu ndiye njia. Jumamosi kuanzia saa 1:30 jioni kwenye runinga uipendayo ya Hope TV.
Welcome to the Dialogue, KE. Kenya has today held its first National Tree Planting Day in a project that the government targets to grow and nurture 15 billion trees by 2032 in order to restore and conserve 10.6 million hectares of degraded landscapes and ecosystems. Climate change ranks among the most important dynamics shaping livelihoods of young people now and in the future. The reason why tonight on the Dialogue KE we discuss on the role of the youth in climate action. To help us dissect this whole matter, I'm now joined in studio by Abigail Kima. Abigail is a climate justice advocate and the host of Hali Hewa podcast, which is an open platform for storytelling on climate at the grassroots. Karibu sana, Abigail.
Thank you so much.
I'm also joined in studio by Waweru Avram, who is the global head of communications at the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network. Avram is also sits at the Executive Council of the network representing the youth in climate action for the 56 Commonwealth member states. Karibu sana, Avram, to the studio.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Well, today, Kenyans planted trees. It's a unique event that has happened in our country. I mean, what's your take on this noble project for the government?
I feel like it's a move in the right direction, seeing that people come out in numbers to actually do tree planting. We're expecting, we're actually having a lot of rain, and it's beautiful that we want to take advantage of this and make it better for the environment. So it's beautiful to see that, and I'm happy that people came out in numbers to do the same.
All right. Abigail, I know you're a climate justice advocate. I mean, this project for the government, what's your take on this?
As Avram has said, I think it's a step towards the right direction. I think people have been planting trees, but it's a brilliant opportunity because now it's more inclusive. It's not only is within like the climate community or people who care about the environment, but now it sort of creates this responsibility for every Kenyan to want to be part of this bigger mission of the 15 billion trees by 2032. And of course, knowing that trees are our biggest carbon sinks, and so it is important to expand the kind of the tree cover that we have in the country, which allows us to reach our goal.
We've talked about 15 billion trees by 2032. It's actually the government's target. Do you think it's achievable?
Most definitely. It's definitely achievable. And I think being that this day has been made a national day for tree planting, I feel like now every Kenyan will feel an obligation to participate. And that's the only way we can achieve this, because if people don't, number one, understand why they need to plant trees, that's where we go wrong. But the fact that it is now a national holiday, I think it's practically very possible to get to the 15 billion trees.
All right. Yeah. Before we get to 2032, today the target was to plant 100 million trees. Do you think that was achieved? I know we have not received the statistics from the government, the data that is, but do you think that was achievable today?
I think it was achievable. If you look at what happened in Nairobi alone, the event I went to, we planted 27,000 trees today in a single day. And I know there are other places where it was being done, Sasumwa, there's Kikuyu Dam, there's one happening at Bomas. So all these concerted efforts coming together, I believe it was achievable. And that's not just Nairobi alone, Kenya countrywide. There are different places where tree planting was happening. So I believe it's much close to that number.
All right.
Yeah.
This year, Kenya experienced the worst drought in 40 years. I mean, did we have to reach to this place to realize that we actually need to conserve our forest and plant trees?
Unfortunately, being Kenyan, sometimes you realize how reactive we are to most issues. I mean, I think I was in primary school when we had Kenya for Kenyans, which was us contributing food items to Turkana, and I feel like we should have learned from that. But of course, now with the conversations around climate action and climate change happening, and of course with my experience doing storytelling, I actually went to Isiolo last year, and I actually saw that drought firsthand, where you're driving and you see animal carcasses spread all over. So to your question, I don't think we should have gotten to this place. I hope for a time when we will work on preventive or mitigation measures so that we don't get to a point where now we have to react to things because it has happened, and now we're in a position where we are too far from actually coming to a solution when we could have prevented it.
Yeah. Avram, I've seen you nodding towards her reaction on the same.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, why did we have to get here for us to know the importance of conservation?
As she said, I think Kenyans were very reactive, yeah? And there's a famous saying, the more things change, the more they remain the same. I mean, 1984, there's one of the biggest droughts in Africa. yeah, and the North Horn was really, really affected. If you look at what happened this year, I don't think we should have let it get here. But you see, I'm always of the opinion that we do so much talking and we do less action on the ground. And I feel like that needs to change because we've been talking since 1972. I mean, Kenya is the global environment headquarters. We have UNEP here, I think, in Gigiri, and we need to set an example for other countries. So I believe more needs to be done, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. And let's see, because I know 2023 is a beautiful year. Africa Climate Summit, it's Year of the Youth for the Commonwealth member states. And we are seeing all this conversation happening around climate action, and people now actually seeing the benefit of having a clean and healthy environment. So I believe maybe sooner rather than later, we'll have a difference in mindset.
All right. We saw actually this year the president lift the ban on logging, but the court has actually suspended that. Was the president well informed on this?
I think it's a matter of how he said it rather than what he said, because the president was trying to address the sustainable use of natural forest products. Yeah, there are people who do such a business where they do. I wouldn't want to call it logging. Let me just say sustainable use of natural forest products, where they grow certain trees for different benefits. For example, making paper, and it's well allowed within the law. Yeah, the issue comes in with the amount that people log. So that's what needs to be regulated. So the president was trying to communicate that we need to actually have this in our ecosystem. But when you do that, please make sure that you also plant 2, 3, 4 trees to replace the one that you've cut down.
Okay, so the main reason as to why the president actually said that lifted the ban on logging, it was actually, he said that this will create jobs and develop sectors of the economy that depend on forest products.
That's quite true. If you look at what happened, I happen to have watched a video. 1976 on Pan Paper was being launched by His Excellency the late Jomo Kenyatta. And if you go to Western, there are so many people who benefited from Pan Paper mills. Yeah, so I think this is what he was trying to address, where we need to maybe create industries around this sector where people can actually benefit, but it needs to be heavily regulated to make sure people don't go above and beyond what is needed. Yeah.
Kenya's forest cover has not reached 10%. If you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. According to a 2021 report by the National Forest Resources Assessment, Kenya's tree cover stands at 12.13%. That's the tree cover, but the forest cover is at 8.3%. Why do you think Kenya is at the state that we are right now, where Kenyans have not been planting trees?
I think it's a matter of information. You say, I mean, the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. So it goes back to, I think the very first time I planted my first tree was maybe when I was in standard 8 or maybe in Form 1. And that's because that habit was not cultivated. And so you don't really grow up seeing the importance of these things. So because it cannot be a responsibility for the people in the space, people who are conservationists or climate change activists or people who understand the needs for this. But I feel like now a lot more has been happening over the last couple of years, with more awareness on what is happening to us, understanding that everything is tied to, how we use our resources, like he said, sustainability. So with that understanding, I feel like we can definitely get to the place that we want to be. So it's just a matter of information. The more people are aware, then the more they take action. And it's high time we move from just saying a lot of things, saying our target is, I don't know, 500 billion trees, but then what are we doing about it? Are we intentionally putting systems together to ensure that everyone is participating, everyone understands the need for us to be planting trees or the need for us to conserve the environment? So it's just a matter of information, and us sitting here on this panel is also a start, because now people get to see actually there is need for us to do this because of ABCD.
And maybe just to add on to her point, in fact, we're moving from calling it climate change to calling it climate crisis, because we need people to understand that it is a crisis. I think there's so much information overload. And scientifically, it's proven that when you bombard people with a lot of information, they rarely take it into account. So speaking about 500 billion trees, 50 billion trees, I think we need to make it digestible. yeah, for the local person to understand. And I believe for me, what needs to happen is creating a lot of awareness, which is what we're seeing start to come up.
Because actually the climate action was seen as a Western thing.
As a Western thing, but you see, actually, Africa is affected the most. We contribute a third of greenhouse gas emissions, but we get impacted the most, and that's not a good sight because it shouldn't be that way. Number one. Number two, I usually like to give this example because during COVID-19, we saw how creating awareness and educating really had an impact on people's lives. I think today, there's no one who doesn't know about COVID-19 and the measures to take. Yeah, sanitizing, wash your hands, and whatnot. So I think we need to really create awareness on this. We really need to educate people. In fact, I'm a champion for including sustainability studies into the curriculum. So as kids grow up, they'll understand, oh, this is the benefit of me using clean and green energy, or this is the benefit of me planting a tree. So the other thing I feel needs to be done is we need to actually give people the opportunity to take part in planting trees or conserving the environment, doing cleanups. And it's beautiful to see that the government has actually championed for it. Because in as much as there are a lot of memes going around, I don't think there's anyone in this country who doesn't know that today we needed to plant trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you're part of the Africa Climate Summit. And under the Nairobi Declaration, leaders propose for global carbon tax. You know, on fossil fuel trade, maritime transport, and aviation, whereby major polluters will commit more resources to help poorer nation. Do you think this is going to be achieved?
It's very much possible. It just needs to be legally binding, according to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the same is
Hmm.
really achievable?
I think it's like you said, anything is possible, but I know it's definitely a complex issue, and that's why not all African countries actually signed on the declaration. There's definitely pushback from certain countries who, of course, are solely dependent on fossil fuels, because, in my opinion, fossil fuels is such a complex conversation and has to be very nuanced because. When you think about South Africa right now, we know the crisis they're going through. I was in Arusha the other day and we literally don't have power for like 12 hours. And that's literally just the next door neighbor. And countries like Nigeria who are dependent on oil, South Africa on coal. So when you talk about global tax for fossil fuels, then you have to think about, communities, their industries. So it's very complex to me, but I think the more we have these conversations, the more we will possibly get to a place where we can understand each other. And that's why, like you said, the Paris Agreement has also become very difficult to effect and to implement back home because, of course, when there's no legally binding component or framework, then people don't really feel obligated to do that, and that's why we are constantly going for meetings every the COPs, Conference of Parties, and then you come back home and there's barely anything. So that's why I always say this, and someone will probably make fun of me, but I say I have more hope in community because once community understands exactly what they need to do, then they're going to do something about it. But yeah, it's achievable. We just really need to consider the nuances, like put all the cards on the table and then see how we balance.
All right. Avram, the president today was at UN offices in Gigiri, and he actually urged other countries to find alternatives to the use of plastics. But I was asking myself, are we doing enough as a country to curb?
Yeah, you see, for us to phase out the fossil fuels, the plastics, we need systematic shifts. And this is a change in policy frameworks, which number one, Kenya did in 2017 by banning plastic bags. 2019, again, they banned plastic bags into, natural parks and your wildlife sanctuaries and whatnot. And last year, this year, actually, March, that 2023, UNEP signed a global treaty calling for people to find a way to eliminate plastics. So I believe it's a step in the right direction. And for me, I believe having sustainable alternatives to plastics is very much achievable. We just need to have a conversation on tax rebates, on actually which alternative are we bringing, how accessible is it to the person. But it's very much possible. It's very much doable.
Abigail, you're a podcast host of Hali Hewa podcast. First of all, I mean, what led you to start this?
So what led me to start this podcast was my experience during my first COP, Conference of Parties, the meeting that happens every year to come together and negotiate on climate change. That happened in Glasgow. So being in this place, you know, things are happening. Why am I forgetting the term? Anyway, so many things were happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And I felt like such a small person, knowing that back home I am this advocate, this activist. But then I noticed being in that place, I didn't see how lived experiences are featuring in those conversations. Like there's no aspect of community. Everything, of course, is based on science, understandably, and having conversations and discussions about where the comma should go and which single word should be removed so that it fits everyone. And so I felt the aspect of community is completely missed and the lived experiences. So coming back home, I thought, why not have conversations? Of course, not many people listen to podcasts, and maybe this won't get to that mama, in Ushago, but it's a start. The target audience was just basically anyone who has access to the internet, a youth, someone who can change the way they see the whole system, the whole ecosystem, how they use the resources to understand why it's important for us to think about transitioning in our consumerism, in our businesses. So that's how I thought a podcast would be a good place to start, to share stories, have conversations. Yeah.
The reason as to have asked that question is because I believe climate change is actually a youth issue, and it's really affecting the youth. And Avram,
Yeah.
I mean, are the youth really engaged in these talks?
There are. Completely. If you look at, I think even the database, in fact, if you just search Environment Youth Organization Kenya, there are so many that come up. Today, where I went for tree planting, there were close to 100, the ones that had come. So the youth are actually really taking this up. Yeah, and they're championing for it at the lowest of levels. Yeah, from the communities all the way to schools, even in organizations. For example, where I work, we are representing 1.6 billion people, and majority of them are the youth. So I feel they have realized this is their issue, because as the youth, we are the ones who will be affected by it the most.
Yeah.
And they're really taking it up. Yeah.
Abigail, what do you think is the role of the youth in all this climate action?
At the moment, of course, the African population of young people is close to 70%. And I feel like we're in the intersection between the older generation and the younger generation. So our role is very big. One, of course, we are experiencing the inaction from the generation that came before us. And the reality is the impacts of the climate crisis that we're feeling now is as a result of actions that happened maybe 20 plus years ago. And so now, as we are stepping into, they always say we are leaders of tomorrow, but really we are leaders of today. And so our biggest responsibility is first to learn from the mistakes of the past. And then secondly, now see how we can, they say you can't do the same thing expecting different results. And I feel like that is what has been happening for a long time, even with conferences like COP that we are preparing for. So our role here is actually to question the system and change status quo. Try and do things differently, because then if we don't step in now, it means our children will literally not have a livable world. And, we keep saying it as a joke. We are just saying, the climate crisis or climate emergency impacts over a long period of time, but you haven't been to a community and seen how they're experiencing it. So you think it's very far from you, but it's coming. So I think we play such a vital role. And as Avram said, youth are very engaged. People understand that the food you eat, how you run your business, everything is literally dependent on how we sustainably manage the resources that we have. So if we don't take that up, if we don't decide to walk a different direction, the UN developed the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. It's literally cross-cutting. It touches on every sector. And I feel like if each and every one of us focused on at least one goal, we would all be working towards achieving, the 2030 goal that even our government has its own goal for that. So we literally are the link between
The
a
older
sustainable
generation.
future. Yeah.
All right. Avram, as you
Yeah.
conclude,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your parting shot? What's your call to action to the youth in the country?
I think for me, I like to say that we need to take care of the environment so that it can take care of us. We are seeing what's happening countrywide with El Nino, and El Nino is actually a climate phenomenon. So people are really being affected, floods and drought.
Because actually 46 people have died.
Yeah, and you can see the flooding in ASAL areas, and you see ASAL areas, they really don't experience a lot of rainfall. The Mandera, the Wajir, and that's where most Garissa, Samburu, and that's where most of the flooding is actually happening. So we need to actually take care of the environment so that it can take care of us, and it starts with a simple step of you planting a tree or choosing to change your mindset and saying from today on, I'll no longer use a plastic bottle, let me use a reusable. So number one, I could conserve water and take care of the next person. Remember, I usually like to also say that in life, try and make it about the other person. Your actions today could actually impact the other person negatively. So try to think about them. Try to think about someone else's child, your own child, and try to think about the world that they'd like to live in and how you'd want to make it better for them.
All right. Abigail, as you conclude, I know you've covered a lot of climate change stories. I mean, what's your call to action?
My call to action is, you know, I think I've gotten to a place where I'm asking myself, so what? I mean, after telling the stories, so what? At some point, you have to see impact. And so my call to action wouldn't really be one, it would be to the different stakeholders. If you see as a good story about an innovative use, then if you have the money, give them the money to upscale their solution. And then to, you know, people who are responsible for policy making, I'd say we really need that intentionality. You know, they say Africa is a graveyard for good policies because we are so good at curating good policies. In fact, if you go to our books, Kenya probably has some of the best policies, but implementation is our biggest problem. So really being intentional about taking that step of implementation forward rather than us coming back to discuss what should be changed, yet we never even acted on what we have not implemented. And then my call to action to the common Kenyan is, you know, Black Friday is coming, or November is Black Friday, but just watch how we are consuming things. Like, do you need that extra dress? Do you need that, you know, extra plastic item in your house? You really don't. So at the end of the day, for us to achieve the bigger picture, it also has to start with you as a person, the personal responsibility aspect of it, because you consume information so that you can do something about it. I mean, you went to school and then now you use that experience in school to contribute to the society, and it's the same thing. Don't just consume and not do anything about it. So personal responsibility, especially to the common mananchi. If you didn't plant a tree today, nobody said you can't plant it tomorrow. So.
It's definitely possible.
All right, I guess that's a very good point to end the conversation. It's a personal responsibility. Did you plant a tree today? If not, tomorrow is also another day you can plant a tree. That has been Abigail Kima, climate justice advocate, and of course, Avram Wawero, the global head of communications at the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
All right. And thank you so much for watching the Dialogue K on this 13th day of November 2023. On behalf of the whole team that made this broadcast a success, have yourselves a blessed night. My name is Kennedy Kimani, and my co-presenter on the sign language interpretation has been Boniface Murithi.